welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Doghouse Sports Podcast, fans' best friend.
For all things sports.
Yes, sir. All right, welcome back, everyone. Well, the meat and potatoes of today's pod will be the second half, picks 17 through 32 of our mock drafts. However, we thought it'd be fun to open up with some other discussion points, draft-related, before we dive in. Stevie, would you like to introduce those?
Yeah. Well, before the pod, you and I were talking a little bit about what we look for in our first round quarterbacks. I think we all know that this year we're going to have a lot of first round quarterbacks picked. I mean, potentially 6.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll see what happens. And so I think it's interesting when you look at your top prospects, every team's going to have different opinions on what they're looking for, just like we do. So thought it'd be fun to just start by chatting a little bit about that. So do you want to start us off, Beach? When you look at some of these quarterbacks coming out of college, we have crazy stats from some, we have crazy teams from others. What do you like to see out of your quarterbacks?
So this might sound like, to some people this might be a little counterintuitive, but I like guys that come out of like not necessarily like powerhouse schools. So
Okay.
like maybe they didn't have like a ton of team success, which a lot of people argue, well, you want like a leader, and a lot of times leaders come from successful programs. Well, I just feel like your college success, I feel like more so than the pros, to an extent, but regardless, relies on who's around you, right? Your talent,
Sure.
your system. And so a lot of times quarterbacks that come out of like powerhouse schools that have a lot of talent around them, they're kind of put up on a pedestal. Like Exhibit A, Mac Jones, right?
Yes, sir.
Mac Jones came from, a very talented Alabama team with a strong running game, strong online, strong receivers, basically like all around, like, 5-star recruits at pretty much every position group. And when you're on a team like that, you don't have to be as dynamic yourself. You still have to be good, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to be as dynamic. And I can't remember if I mentioned on the pod or not. I definitely mentioned to you offline. But to me, this year's Mac Jones is JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy is a guy who everyone oozes over the intangibles, right? Leadership, comes from a successful program, knows how to win. When I look at JJ McCarthy, I look at a guy that came from a school that relied heavily on running game in Blake Corum and a strong defense, led by Jesse Minter, who is now a defensive coordinator in the NFL with the Los Angeles Chargers. You know, and so like I'm not saying that McCarthy's going to be a bust, but personally, that's actually one of the reasons why I'm not as high on McCarthy as some other people are. Outside of that, like I think it really is hard to pinpoint like what makes a good quarterback, because we've seen quarterbacks with so many different sets of skills. Gone are the days where you have to be prototypical pocket passer, 6'5", 230, when they looked for in like, early 2000s. And
who is our prototypical guy in the league right now? Like that type quarterback.
I mean, Justin Herbert.
I mean, Justin Herbert, sure, but he's got mobility too.
Yeah, but he could live as a pocket passer.
That's true. I guess you could argue like Kirk Cousins is.
I mean, oh yeah, Kirk Cousins and like Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford and Kirk Cousins are still kind of members of the old guard. They kind of fit that pocket passer, limited mobility mold, for sure. But as far as like new age goes, like Justin Herbert, like Patrick Mahomes. But Patrick Mahomes is magical on his feet as well when he needs to be.
Is the new prototypical quarterback, though, is the guy who can sit in the pocket and launch it, but a guy who can also get outside the pocket. And I think for me, tying it back to what we're looking for in our college quarterbacks, something that's important is knowing what you want your offense to be, right? Because we saw it with the 49ers, right? Like they know what they need for their offense. They need a guy who can sit back there, run the offense well. Game manager is not an insult for Brock Purdy. That is what the 49ers need him to be.
So some people might take offense to this, but I think Tom Brady actually falls under the game manager umbrella. Now,
I agree with you.
He's absolutely the greatest game manager to ever live. And I'm not saying, like, once again, that's not an insult when we say it. But the way his play style was, he wasn't like a Patrick Mahomes where like wowed you with elite arm talent, crazy like pocket presence. He was just a guy that did everything well and was super clutch, you
For
know?
sure. And, I think that whenever you try and take an offense or when you need something like that and you try and go outside the box, sticking with the 49ers example, Trey Lance, they picked him because they thought he had the athletic tools to be something. And, it ended up he didn't have those tools necessarily, but
Yeah. But it's kind of funny with that whole situation was like they had Jimmy G, who they were successful with, right? They made deep into the playoffs, but they felt that they needed a dynamic guy to get them over the hump. So that's why they
yeah,
traded up, invested so much in taking a quote unquote dynamic guy in Trey Lance. And then they kind of ended up coming back full circle and settled on Brock Purdy, who I think he's better than Jimmy G. Don't get me wrong. But I think in a lot of ways he's a more similar player to Jimmy Garoppolo than he is to
for
Trey
sure.
Lance.
He's a younger, more mobile, cheaper, and hopefully more durable than Garoppolo. I agree. And so I think when we look at this quarterback class, right, you got Caleb Williams, who is, I mean, maybe the closest thing we've seen to Patrick Mahomes comp wise. Then you got
Yeah.
Drake May, you got Jane Daniels, who I think are both super athletic on the two opposite sides of the coin there. And then you get to a guy like JJ McCarthy, who might not have those physical tools, but if you need a guy who's going to run your offense, who's going to stand back there and develop, coming in at 21 years old, be with your team for the long run. Maybe that's why we're hearing some of these teams like the Vikings, who have the weapons, have the offense, have the mind. Maybe that's why we're starting to hear some of these. That's our guy. Plus the stats we talked about last time, but yeah.
This actually just came to me now, and this not only applies to quarterback for me, but I think it's amplified by quarterback because a lot of people consider it the most important position, and people draft high at quarterback. I when I'm looking at guys, quarterbacks, any position, I'm not a fan of late risers. People that
Mm,
started the draft
love this.
process kind of going in like the end of the first round, and then by the end, they're top 10. Once again, I hate to say it, but like JJ McCarthy, like he's been a
That's
guy
true.
who like projected to go middle to late first, and now he's projected to go top 10. I'm not a fan of late risers. I feel like teams get infatuated. They get some sort of storyline, whether that be something coming out of the combine, whether that be like a pro day. I mean, look, who let's see if you can pick up who I'm talking about here. Who was kind of like not a huge deal until his pro day a couple years ago. He had an amazing across the body deep throw that wowed everyone.
Give me a little
Came
more. I can get there.
came out of BYU.
Oh, Zach Wilson. That's a
Yeah.
that is a absolutely incredible take. Yes.
Yeah. Like he had a fantastic pro day and suddenly he was on the map and he was taken second overall. Right.
I'm glad we're talking about this now because I want to hold us accountable for tracking where that comes from here because it's going to happen before the draft. Somebody right now is going to be shot into the first round, top of the first round consideration, who we do not view as that player right now. And I think you're right. I think if we look back, there'd be a lot of red flags there. So we could talk about this stuff all day. This is a lot of fun. I think we might have to save our other topic for another pod.
Mm.
But with that said, keeping the quarterback considerations in mind as we work through the rest of this draft, I don't know if either of us have, but let's jump back into it.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna continue our second half of our mock draft. If you missed that episode, we covered picks 1 through 16. That will be out. We're gonna publish both at the same time or approximately. But so yeah, we'll dive right in. I'll kick us off, Stevie. So at number 17, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars picking, and I have them taking a corner,
Okay.
and I have them going Nate Wiggins.
Okay.
This is a guy that I've seen people that are really high on him, and he goes top 20 like I have here. I've seen people that more so project him as bottom of the first. I have him as my number 3 corner after Mitchell, or after Arnold number 1 and Mitchell number 2. And when I look at the Jaguars' needs, right? They did pick up Ronald Darby, which I think is a great addition, but he is 30. Um, and as we know, corner is uh one of the main positions that we kind of see decline after 30 more quickly than some other positions. And I think the Jaguars did a good job at addressing some other needs. Um, So I have them going corner here, and Nate Wiggins, who is blazing fast.
Yeah, no, I also have the Jags going corner. If I'm remembering correctly. At 15, you had the Colts taking Quinyon Mitchell. Is that right?
Yeah, at
Yeah, so
15.
I have the Colts taking Arnold at 15. So this is where I have Mitchell coming off the board. I struggle with that. I think a lot of people right now view Arnold as the clear one and then Mitchell as the two. I go back and forth. We'll see where it ends up
Yeah.
in my
I
final
mean,
block, but I love what Mitchell brings just in terms of like what we're seeing on tape, what we've seen in some of these post-season scouting opportunities.
yeah.
Kid can play.
Yeah. No, there's no denying that. But like kind of going back to what I was saying about quarterbacks, um, Mitchell is a great off the field tester where Arnold, I think he ran a 4.5, which is very average for corner. So I could see teams going with Mitchell over Arnold. And I think a lot of that will be due to the athletic ability. I think that would be personally, I think that mistake. I get what you're saying, and I get what teams would see with that. But another thing I've said is I like to use the combine and testing as more of a meet a minimum rather than exceed expectations and use it as that a parameter. What I mean by that is as long as you test within certain numbers, that's a good indicator rather than, oh, you're a phenomenal tester that flies you up my draft board. To me, like 4.5 all average is fast enough. And Arnold, I think he's just a better overall prospect. Um, anyway, let's move on to 18.
Yes.
Um, so I've seen this player taken much higher than I have him, and if the Bengals get him here at 18,
I think we're about
it'll,
to go the
it'll,
same way. Yeah.
it'll be a steal, and that's Talis Fuaga.
Oh, I'm lying.
Yeah, yeah. So now the Bengals did pick up Trent Brown, who is a great player, but he's on the wrong side of 30 and he's extremely injury prone. And their priority number one has to be, as it has been, has to be to protect Joe Burrow, who has experienced multiple injuries at this point. So I think O line is the way to go here, and Fuaga at 18 is phenomenal value, as I've seen him projected top 10 in some mocks.
Yeah, yeah. I had him going 10 to the Jets. I mean, that I
Yeah,
didn't even realize he was still on your board. Fuaga is an awesome pick at 18. In a different way, I have them getting a steal here at 18 as well. I forget where you had this guy going. I have him getting Brock Bowers, though,
oh,
at
he's not
18.
off
Who?
yet for me.
Oh, he's not off yet for you. So we both have them sliding a little bit. Here's why. I'm sure. I mean, this is a big topic that kind of going into the offseason people were chatting about. If you pick a tight end, top of the first round, you're paying a premium for the position already. You're paying, I mean, not like a Travis Kelce guy, but you're paying a lot of money for that. If he's here at 18 for the Bengals, I think it's a no-brainer. You got to take
Yeah,
that. But
like I agree. Like when you take a tight end early, I'm not trying to undervalue the tight end position, but it's one of those positions where like if you're taking him at the top of the first round, he better be good, and he
yeah,
better make an impact right away. And we saw the names escaping right now. Who's the guy that went really high to the Falcons?
oh, Kyle Pitts, yeah, yeah,
Kyle Pitts. Like he was taking top 10 and he hasn't really lived up to that yet, right? Um, and like I do think Brock Bowers will probably go higher than we had projected, but it's also kind of tough to like um figure out where a team will be comfortable taking a tight
I can
end.
see it like the
So that's
Saints at
why,
14. That's 4 picks higher, but
yeah, I think his peak is probably 10 with the Jets. Um, and
mm,
his floor is probably where I have him going in a few picks, but I won't spoil it.
sounds good.
But yeah, but no, I mean, if he, I like that pick to the Bengals. I mean, it just adds another weapon, and if T Higgins leaves, you're going to need
Yeah.
complementary weapons for Jamar Chase. So I like that pick.
All
All
right,
right,
19 to the Rams.
19. I have the Rams taking kind of Aaron an upcoming replacement, I guess, for Aaron Donald. Like no one's gonna fill Aaron Donald's shoes. No one's naive like that. But I've been thinking Byron Murphy, who is, I think, for the most part, considered easily the best defensive tackle in this class.
Yeah, I would agree.
Um, now this class isn't overridden with elite defensive tackles. I think um, Byron Murphy will probably be first one, and I don't see him going top 15. But I think at 19, it's a pretty good spot for him. And my only thing is I hope that if this does happen, that like there's not like expectations that he will be the next Aaron Donald, because he's
It's
not.
a trap. Yeah.
Yeah. But I still think he's a very good player at an area of need, and he would fit well in the Rams defense.
Yeah, I like that. I might be a little higher on him than you are. I have him going 16 to Seattle.
Mhm.
I think he is. And like I said in an earlier pod, we're seeing D line really become another one of the premium positions that teams need and are going to pay for. So I like that pick. Not to be, to your point though, the heir apparent, because you can't necessarily expect that. I have kind of this theme of delayed corners from you. I have Wiggins going to the Rams at 19. I think it'd be a really nice piece for their defense. Add the speed, support
Oh,
it.
100%. Like I think that you could argue corner is a bigger need actually than D line. Um, but like with the top 3 off my board, I did go D line. But I love if Wiggins is still there. I love that fit. In Los Angeles for him. So going on now, we're at number 20, and we have the Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock. I have them going Graham Barton, O
Mm,
line from Duke. You know,
yeah,
and where like I think this is probably the highest he would go. I think he's probably like more as far as like where he fits in like if you would rank everybody, probably more so maybe in the late 20s or even 30, like early 30s. But I
yeah,
think that his position flexibility, you know, he played left tackle at Duke, but he started his career there as a center and will probably play interior on the next level. I mean, we always see like versatility is big, and with O lineman, I think that's working his advantage. And I also think that the Steelers are like did a pretty good job at addressing their big needs. And of interior line wide receivers, their biggest need, but I don't really like a guy at 20 at wide receiver.
it's a
So
tough
that's why I'm
spot
going.
for receiver. Yeah,
Yeah, that's why I'm going Graham Barton here. You know, I think he'll slide in and can start right away at center for them. So and
yeah. I
you
don't.
know and while not like uh fancy pick, when if you can draft like an interior lineman in the back half of the first round and he'll start for you for next 10 years, that's a home run.
Yeah, I wonder if you're the Steelers in this spot. So I also just quickly have them going O line, taking J.C. Latham out of Bama. That would be more of a tackle selection, but still just showing up the O line. I wonder though if you're the Steelers and you do think you like one of the receivers, you can get him a little bit later. If you consider listening to any trade offers here, move up to 20. I don't know exactly what a team would be looking at, maybe edge, but I mean something to consider because
Yeah, like
we
yeah,
get a later first round trade.
yeah, exactly. Because like 20 is kind of that turning point where like there might be some guys who two teams viewed as top 15 players, but slipped, and
Yeah,
they want to grab them before they slip even further. So yeah, I agree. Like Steelers could be in a pretty good position to trade back a couple spots, and still be able to maybe take a guy they really like in the mid 20s.
for
All
sure.
right, moving on to Miami, and now this is where at 21, this is where I have Brock Bowers.
Okay,
You
I'm gonna
know,
hate that. As a Patriots fan, not for the Dolphins, but it's a great pick for the Fins.
yeah, you know, and they already have elite wide receivers in Hill and Waddle, and adding a guy like Bowers would just make this offense even more explosive. Now they did pick up Johnny Smith at tight end, but I don't personally I don't see Johnny Smith as like a full-time starter. I see him more of like a nice
No, he's a
compliment
support
tight
guy.
end. Um and like you know like I think the you could argue the Dolphins might have bigger needs in tight end, like O line especially. But I think this is like a classic BPA best position of best player available pick.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
good UPA pick.
I
Yeah.
think that like if you're getting Brock Bowers at 21, that's a steal, and that's kind of how I see the what the Dolphins if they would go this scenario.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about that is we feel strongly about Bowers for sure. Probably a little bit more than last year, but Reminds me a little bit of Mayer, who really did end up sliding. He went the second round to the Raiders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think we see him go to the second round, but I think there might be a precedent for him falling a little further
Yeah.
than we think.
I mean,
This
I think the big difference is we never saw Mayer like projected to go top 10.
that's true.
And at the beginning of this draft cycle, there were people predicting him to go to the Chargers at 5. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
like I think Brock Bowers is on a different talent level than Mayer was. Um, so I think 21 is great value for
at 21 for the Dolphins. I have him going with Chop Robinson out of
him.
Penn State. I feel like he's a guy who also fell a little bit. There was a lot of excitement heading into the season around him being one of the top two edges. He's not there now, but I think this is great value for him at 21. I like the 20s, early 20s to mid for Chop.
Yeah, I think his biggest detriment is lack of production, which always worries me a bit. I'm pretty big on production in college. I like guys that can produce more so than have a lot of upside. Um, so it was hopefully, for Chop's sake, he can find that next gear in the NFL. Um, and I mean I like the pick there for them because they have both their edges and Chubb and Phillips are coming off major injuries.
Big
So
injuries. Yeah.
22, we have the Eagles on the clock. I have them taking Cooper DeJean, secondary guy out of Iowa. Now, this is an interesting player because he played outside corner primarily in Iowa, but some people are like projecting that he might kind of he could he'll probably get a crack at playing outside corner, which I think that even though the Eagles have starters in Bradbury and Slay, I still think they should give him a chance to because those guys I think showed a little signs of regression last year. They're both over 30. But I also think that even if like he doesn't start outside corner, he could be just a great like chess piece for a secondary, right?
Yeah.
He's and I think the Eagles need a guy like that in their secondary. They did pick up CJ Gardner Johnson, which was a great start, but I think adding a guy like Cooper DeJean would just make that secondary even better.
Yeah, I think of when you were just describing that, like we talk sometimes about tackles who'd be drafted serviceable starting tackle in the league, but a great interior piece that's still worth adding. It's kind of the same thing here, right? He might not be your prototypical corner, but he's still going to contribute to your team in a really big way. So
Yeah.
I like DeJean as well. I really like my Eagles pick at 22. I have them taking Jackson Powers Johnson, a similar kind of heir apparent vibe to what you were talking about with the Rams. Again, you can't expect Kelsey, but this guy is a first round true. I think he can play guard, but a true center, really, that you're
Yeah.
drafting. So
He really has the making and a feel of a guy that like once again, not like a fancy pick, but you just draft him and forget about it for 10 years, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Um, so moving on to 23. So in my mock, I projected a trade. So I have the New England Patriots on the clock here at
Mm.
23. And I have them going O line, which I think outside of quarterback is their biggest need. I have them taking Tyler Guyton here. Guyton who lined up primarily at right tackle should have the athletic ability to transition to the left side if needed. Um, he's I when we get into this part of the draft, I feel like the O linemen um, aren't as strong as the top half, but I still think Guyton could become a very good pro get in the right situation.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I have him a little lower, but I like that pick. Um, I have Houston sticking at this pick, picking Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Bama. Um,
Hmm.
it'll be interesting to see where he goes. This might be a little rich for him at 23. But I do think that whereas DeJean's not going to be your prototypical corner, I do think that's what you're drafting McKinstry to be. So if you feel like that's what you need in the Texan situation, you know,
And you said that's the Vikings for you.
at 23, I have the Texans there because when I was making
Oh,
that trade hadn't gone through yet. So this would be the Vikings pick, and this would be different for me in a redraft.
I mean
But currently,
the Vikings could take McKinstry. They have a need. they could use guys at corner. So
Yeah, so 23. How do you feel about that value for him though?
I personally don't hate it. I think I've seen that like McKinstry is like fallen a bit. Like I think that
Yes.
I've heard that he might even like drop into round two at
He's
this
a
point.
fringe second round guy, yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to Dallas. So I think for a similar reason why you like this guy 2 picks ahead, I think Jackson Powers Johnson feels like a Cowboy.
I
You
can see
know,
that.
I the Cowboys have had success drafting O linemen, and like I think Jackson Powers just like fits that mold. And he's a guy that will slide right in. You know, they lost their starting center in Tyler Badazi um, in free agency. I think this is a guy that you draft him. Hopefully, you resign him and you throw at the key. He's a starter for you for the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have the Cowboys going to line. I have them taking Amarius Mims, who is a giant. Um, I mean, not literally, but he's a huge guy, and I could see him similarly just kind of sliding in there. They really seem to know what they're looking for in O-line talent, so a tackle there for them. So 25, I'll start us out
Well,
here. Or
yeah,
go ahead.
just yeah, sorry. Just one thing like about Mims. I think I'm lower on him than most.
Hmm,
Um, because he only started 8 games in college. And to me, that's a massive red flag because I've mentioned it before. I don't like drafting traits, you know, and especially in the first round. Now I do we'll get there, but I do still have him cracking the first round because this isn't necessarily what I would want, but what I think will happen anyway.
sure.
But like I just don't see like for all you could have all the talent in the world, but like how do you have an ample sample size at 8 college
That's
start?
fair.
And like in the other like kind of red flag to me, that means that for whatever reason, the coaches didn't feel comfortable playing him until much later in his career. And I feel like now there's always exceptions to this rule, but I feel like for the most part, like first round guys are premium guys that were like starters earlier on in college. I don't know. I'm not as high on Mims as a lot.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that maybe more so than other positions, and I want to be careful about what I say here, but I think that O line you might be able to draft a little bit more for the traits than you can like a quarterback or like a receiver. I think, and
I
that's why I want to be
disagree.
careful. That's
I
why I want to be
disagree.
careful because obviously the gameplay matters, and you still got to be able to move, and you got to get the leverage, and you got to know how to get off the ball. But I think that there's something to just having size in the NFL on the O line.
Yeah, I you're not wrong, but I think I have to disagree with that. But moving on to 25, we have Green Bay.
Yeah.
This is where I have McKinstry coming off the board here. You know,
Okay.
the Packers are like while very young, they're like a very well-rounded team,
Scary. Yeah.
and I think McKinstry would just add another piece to that secondary.
Yeah, I also am going corner. You already talked about DeJean. I think similar reasons. Just put a nice piece on that defense to support it. So not much more to add there. 26, I'm excited about, but I was more excited before free agency. I'll let you start though for the Bucks.
Yeah, no, I have the Bucks going Latu coming out of UCLA.
I
Now,
love it.
yeah, if they get him at 26, this is an absolute steal, great value. Um, this is a guy that has the talent when just looking talent to be like top 15, if not top 10. However, he has a pretty gnarly injury history, actually being medically retired from his first school before transferring to UCLA. And to me, that's why I see him slide here. And we've seen like not only take out the medical aspect of it, we've seen like guys slide before. Like for example, last year, Murphy coming out of Clemson. A lot of people rejected him. He was an edge guy, be top 10. He
Yeah.
didn't go till the end of the first round. To the Bengals. I I don't know. I just have a feeling that Latu might slide. Um, but I think it's
Great
great.
value for the Bucks. I mean, that's that. I think he could be one hell of a player. So again, this draft was a little bit before some of those big free agency moves, some of the big trades. I wasn't necessarily predicting the Bucks were going to move on from Baker Mayfield, but I didn't think he was going to get the deal he did. We'll see how that plays out. I have them taking Bo Nix here at 26. I don't necessarily see that happening anymore because Nix is a guy who has experience, who I think won't sit more than half a season if he does. I do like this range for Nix. I think bottom of the first round, turn of the second is where he should go.
Yeah. I had Knicks going really high just because of kind of what we talked about earlier in this pod, like because quarterbacks make a push. I think that Knicks could fall out of the first round. Same with
Yeah,
Penix, which I don't have Penix going in the first round. I'll do that spoiler right now because like I mean we saw it last year. It's not unprecedented with Levis. People were projecting Levis to go as high as was it 4 to the Colts, if not higher. But then he ultimately fell out on the first. So I could see that happening with Penix or Nix, or I could also see a lot. Sometimes what we see is when these quarterbacks fall to the bottom of the first round, teams that have like one of the first picks on day 2 trade back into the first round to make sure they get their quarterback and also get that 5th-year option.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I agree that like this late 20s kind of feels like right for Nix and Penix.
Yeah, I actually wonder if the Patriots end up trading down and the Vikings come up and get that pick, if the Patriots consider trading back up, because I'm not sure they get McCarthy at 11 if they trade back. I think there's a chance that like the Giants could take him, the Broncos could try and trade up. So I wonder if the Patriots in this kind of range come back in and take their pick of Knicks or Penix, whichever they prefer, late first round.
Yeah.
But
All right. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals at 27. And this is where I have Chop Robinson going, a couple picks after you did. I think this is another guy that has great potential, as we mentioned, but, production wasn't always there. So, but it's an area of need, pretty good value. Cardinals going
yeah,
Robinson.
yeah, we're going in the same direction with a lot of these picks, which is funny. I have them going corner, taking Rakestraw from Missouri. I'm not sure if he's a first round guy. I think he's kind of fringe there. I do like him. I'm probably a little bit higher on him than the boards say right now, just because I think he has some consistency in school that you don't see out of the other prospects. But that's who I have Arizona going with.
I mean, corner is a big area of need for them. So now we have 28. Uh, Buffalo Bills. I have them going Adonai Mitchell here. I think they lost Gabe Davis in free agency. They did pick up Trey Samuel, but I think that I don't view him as a true number 2. And they have Shakir, but I don't know if he's a true number 2 either.
Yeah,
Plus, Diggs is on the wrong side of 30 and has some drama surrounding him. I think adding another weapon would be great for Buffalo. And I think there's a lot of varying opinions about who the 5th receiver is. I think for the most part, the top 4 are fairly set in no particular order in Harrison, Adunze, Neighbors, and Thomas. But I think that this 5th spot, everyone likes someone different. You hear Xavier Worthy, another Texas guy, Lad McConkey, even
Troy Franklin.
yeah,
Bucky Brooks is high on him.
yeah. I'm personally not high on Troy Flangen, but we'll save that for another
Yeah.
day.
So I also have the Bills going receiver though. Now this is a guy who slid in my draft. Probably wouldn't make it here if I redrafted, but Brian Thomas,
Yeah,
excellent,
if Brian Thomas is there at 28, the Bills are sprinting up to the stand, leaping for joy. Now I'll admit, like, I mean, I had him going at 10 in this mock, and I think I'm higher on them than most. But I think LSU guy, uh, wide receiver factory. I really like Brian Thomas. All right, Detroit 29. All right, so I like this pick because I feel like I got kind of in the mind of the Detroit Lions, kind of based off of what happened last year. The Detroit Lions took 2 guys, really, really 3 guys, but 2 guys in the first round, higher than a lot of teams respected in uh, Gibbs and Campbell, right? In that vein, I have them going Cooper Beebe, who's a guard out of Kansas State. I haven't seen him projected to go first round often, but to me, this is a guy we talked about plug and play interior lineman for the next 10 years. I think this guy is exactly it. He doesn't necessarily like scream first round pick, but I think in the Lions' eyes, like they're more so they're less concerned about where they pick a guy. They target players they think will make immediate impact and be good pros. And I think Cooper Beebe is that guy. You know, they lost Jonas Jackson for agency. Their two starting guards, in Zeitler and Glasgow, are both over 30. You know, I think that this is a guy that you draft and plug and play starter for a long time.
Yeah, I like that pick. That's fun. I also have them going O-line. And I think for some of the reasons that you had Barton going earlier, I have him here for the Lions because of that versatility. I agree they could use that immediate contribution. He can play left guard, right guard, even center. So I have them with Barton.
All right, 30, Baltimore Ravens. I have them going J.C. Latham, who I believe is already off your board, a decent amount higher. You know, the Ravens traded away Morgan Moses, and they lost Zeitler, so their offensive line could definitely use the boost. I think J.C. Latham will probably get a shot at right tackle, but could also potentially move inside the guard. So I think this is pretty good value for him at 30.
Yeah, and then I know this guy already went off your board, but I have Guyton to the Ravens at 30, which I think is a great pick for them. Similar reasons.
Yeah.
So 31.
31. I have the San Francisco 49ers going Darius Robinson. You know, this is a very versatile defensive lineman, which I think they like. And oddly enough, I think like a decent comp for him is Eric Armstead, who just left the 49ers, a guy that can play inside and outside. And they lose some guys on their on their D line. So I think Darius Robinson could be a pretty good fit for the 49ers.
Yeah, I have the same pick. I think this guy just feels like a Niner. I usually in the late first round, I have a tough time feeling really confident in my picks. I think this makes sense to pick him here. He feels like a Niner. I mean, I I agree with you there.
All right, now 32. This is where I have the guy I mentioned earlier, who I'm not super high on, but I have the Chiefs going Armarius Mims. You know, I think everyone's projecting him to pretty much be a lock as a first rounder because of those traits. And at 32, it is pretty good value. The Chiefs have a need a tackle with Donovan Smith leaving. And they were able to bring in Marquise Brown to kind of boost that receiver room, so they're not gravitated to go there. I was really between Mims and Worthy, right? Because Worthy is still on my board, and a lot of people think Worthy would be a great fit in the Chiefs, and I agree. But I think ultimately they decide with the addition of Brown to go protection for Mahomes, which you need to protect your most valuable asset. And I also think Mims is more widely viewed as a first rounder than Worthy because Worthy's kind of more fringe. So I have Maurice Mims going to the Chiefs here at 32.
Yeah, I don't hate that if he's on the board. I don't love this pick as much either. I probably would have gone Worthy here because they got Hollywood. I have Adonai Mitchell, though, going to the Chiefs here. I feel like Worthy's probably the better complement to the core they have right now. But I think Mitchell's a really solid player.
I disagree. I think Mitchell is actually the better complement. Like, if I were the Chiefs situation, I would go with what you did. I would take Mitchell.
What do you view Hollywood as? Like, if you're giving him a prototype as a receiver?
Well, he's a field stretcher. He's a smaller guy. I think I've actually, I would have to fact check myself on this, but I've actually feel like I've heard comps of Worthy to Hollywood.
Like, oh, really?
Yeah. And to me, Mitchell is he's more of a jump ball specialist. Brown is not that guy. So I actually like the fit of Mitchell over Worthy, actually.
And I feel like Mitchell's a first round guy overall.
Yeah. So all right. Well, that brings us to the end of our first round.
It does.
And this won't be our last mock that we do a podcast for. In the not too far away future, we'll each do another mock draft and go over that. And also something to look forward to. We're going to do some live mock drafts, bring in some new faces to do that.
Blast.
So look forward to that. Really, yeah, we're really excited for that. We think that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, thanks for tuning in on this today's episode of The Doghouse Sports, fans' best friend for
all things sports. We'll see you all next time.